Okay, well, let's get started. I know we have some other folks who registered who may be joining late, but I want to respect all of your time. So my name is Kate Rivera. I'm the Executive Director of the Technology Learning Collaborative, or TLC. I think I know most of the folks here, or you know of us, but TLC is a Digital Equity Coalition based here in Philadelphia and working in the greater Philadelphia area as well. And so we bring together all of the individuals and organizations that are working on digital equity in the region to share information, connect with each other, and to advocate for the needs of the sector. And so today, unfortunately, we'll be talking about the end of ACP and kind of what the post-ACP landscape looks like. And I'll be starting by just sharing a little bit from the kind of national side of what's been happening in terms of funding ACP, as well as some slightly more local efforts. And then I'll turn things over to Juliet Fink-Yates from the City of Philadelphia's Office of Innovation and Technology, who will share a little bit about the resources that the city has and the efforts the city is implementing around the end of ACP. And then lastly, my colleague David Cooper Moore will be talking through some of the details around what low-cost plans are available for folks who may be, looking to change their benefits, their internet service since ACP, when ACP ends, or also things like consumer protections that are in place for people who were ACP recipients. And I believe we also have some folks from some of the internet service providers here who can share some details about their plans as well. Just sort of kick things off, April was the last month that the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, had full funding. So the last month that participants were receiving the full $30 per month benefit. And then now in May, we are in a partial benefit month. So participants with ISPs who are participating in the partial benefit are receiving a lower amount, and the expectation is that in just a couple of short weeks, less than 2 weeks, in June, the benefit will be completely over. Just to kind of back up a little bit, so there have been extensive efforts to advocate for funding of this program to continue. In fact, the Affordable Connectivity Program Extension Act was introduced in Congress back in January with bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. But there, unfortunately, just has not been movement to actually have that bill be voted on and passed in either the House or the Senate. There have also been more recently attempts to try to amend other bills to attach funding for the ACP to some other funding bills. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was some hope that federal aviation funding bill might get ACP attached to it and have it passed that way. So far, none of those efforts have been successful. And so things are looking increasingly grim. I think it's a kind of good rule of thumb in as far as politics and it's hard to guess with complete certainty what Congress may or may not do. So it's a little bit of a never say never situation. There's still some possibility that in the next couple of weeks or even after the ACP ends, that somehow there's a political breakthrough and funding is passed or something similar to ACP could come up. There are still there's some hope. It's not you know, I wouldn't say that you should completely give up all hope, but I think everyone's a lot less hope than we did months ago, when there was hope that Congress would act before this program would end. It really looks like it's going to end without Congress acting to stop it from ending. There was also conversation around forcing what they call a discharge petition to force the House basically to vote on the Affordable Connectivity Program Extension Act. That was a little bit of like a Hail Mary kind of effort that they were discussing, but that ended up not even being introduced because it just seemed like there wouldn't be enough support for the discharge petition to pass, and then the bill wouldn't be considered. So we're really just kind of at a stalemate there in terms of Congress. And so I think the assumption at this point should be that ACP is completely ending at the end of this month, and we're going to be in a post-ACP landscape. I also just will quickly mention two other things. One is that there have been conversations happening around a longer term solution for ACP, or something like the ACP to be incorporated into the Universal Service Fund, and to try to fund it in some way, kind of similar to the way that Lifeline is currently funded. But there's not consensus around that yet. There's been some early conversations. There's not consensus around what the exact right approach would be for that, or kind of the, I think, political will to make something like that happen. Although our Pennsylvania State Senator John Fetterman did introduce a bill in the Senate earlier this month, I think at the beginning of the month, around making that happen, but it's not a bill that really has broad support at this time. The last thing I'll mention, and again, I feel like I'm share a very bleak voice here this afternoon, is there was also a bill introduced at the state level. So this has, you know, this issue has come to the attention of elected officials both here in Philadelphia and City Council, as well as at the state level, in the House and in the State House and Senate. And so there was a bill introduced in the State House that is a very long name. It's called an Act Establishing the Affordable Broadband Internet Access Service Program, the Affordable Broadband Internet Access Service Fund. But that, again, this is a bill that's been introduced, but it does not at this time look like something that has a lot of legs in terms of moving forward. It would have a pretty big price tag for the state to basically create a state version of the ACP. And there's been no funding kind of earmarked or identified for that yet. But it is something to, I mean, it's, you know, it's at least a good sign that there's a number of co-sponsors, some of whom are from Philly, on that bill. So it's at least a sign that this is getting attention, and that elected officials understand that it's an issue for our communities. And so I will include in the chat in a minute a link to that bill. I am planning on reaching out to the Philly area state representatives who sponsored or co-sponsored that bill, just to have a conversation with them. Since they've introduced this bill and part of this bill, that means that they are paying some attention to this issue. And so it's a good way for us to introduce ourselves and talk about the work that's happening here in Philly. So if anyone is interested in being a part of those conversations, let me know, especially like if you when I put the link in here, I can do it now. It's not a very pretty link. if you are interested in talking with state reps about this issue, particularly if you see a co-sponsor who is, like, you live in their district or your organization's in their district and you want to work with me to have a conversation with them, I'd be happy to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing all the sad political news. I'll just pause briefly, see if there are any questions on anything that I shared here before we move on to some more kind of concrete information.
Hey, I know this isn't exactly the focus of today, but could you mention for folks, we'll have future webinars on this topic, but there's still a lot of funding for digital navigation and other pieces that are still coming through with or without ACP being a piece of it. I'm wondering if we could maybe just give a sneak preview of some of that stuff just to have a little bit of good news going into the
So I'm not quite so gloomy.
Well, just to get the full picture, that's all.
Yeah. So the ACP was first introduced as a part of the federal infrastructure bill. And while unfortunately ACP only had a limited amount of funding that's now ending, there were a lot of other parts of that bill that have funding that's going to be rolled out over the next couple of years. So there is funding in that bill under the Digital Equity Act. And so there's funding coming to the state that the state will be going through a process to distribute that funding to communities. So there'll be an application process for organizations to apply for that funding through the state. There'll also be a separate Digital Equity Act funding stream administered at the federal level. Again, organizations could apply for. We'll be having future conversations around this. It's going to be a big opportunity to try and get funding for a lot of the really great work that's happening here in Philadelphia, and we'll want organizations that are interested in applying to be coordinating around it so that we don't have so that we're working in a way that is collaborative and not competitive and not duplicating efforts and things like that. So we'll be certainly getting folks together for more conversations as that funding gets closer to being available to have conversations around that. But there is the Digital Equity Act funding will certainly allow for things like conducting digital skills classes. There's also funding through the I was on vacation recently, and I think I have a little bit of vacation brain still. Through the Capital Projects Fund, which was stimulus funding that was distributed to the states back in pandemic response times. That there's the state is rolling out some funding through the Capital Projects Fund that's coming up for things like device lending. And so we'll also be sharing more information about a lot of those opportunities soon as well. So there is funding for organizations that are doing important work that is coming. Unfortunately, the outlook for specifically this internet subsidy program to help people afford their internet bills looks like it's ending.
Any other questions about the general state of things from anybody? Well, I think we will turn things over to Juliet to talk a little bit about some of the city's plans for the wind down process. But I'm going to stop sharing and let Juliet, you can share your screen.
All right, thanks for having me. Let's see. slideshow mode for you all. Get there. Sorry.
Down at the bottom of the screen,
Yeah.
next to display
Yeah.
settings. Yep,
There
there
you
you go.
guys. Yeah, thank you. I know. Appreciate that. Okay. All right, so talk a little bit about what the city is doing. I wanted to just back up and kind of remind folks a little bit about where where our divide is. This is some updated stats based on ACS 2022 data. So 1.7% of Philadelphia households have no internet subscription still. And those numbers are significantly higher when they are low income or seniors. These are two examples. There's other disparities as well, but these are the most. So 31% of households that have an annual income below 20,000 are without an internet subscription, and 33% of seniors lack home broadband. 32% of Philadelphia households are considered subscription vulnerable. And this is a term that is used by Benton John Horrigan's research that he did with our 2021 Internet Household Survey that really describes how folks may not be able to afford internet or may experience service interruption. And it's a really useful thing to think through the percentage of folks who may struggle to continue to afford their internet after the ACP ends. This number, the last I looked, the 183,000 households were enrolled in the ACP in Philadelphia, which is 24% of all households in Pennsylvania. So almost a quarter of all Pennsylvania households. There's a total, though, of 345,000 Philadelphia households that would be eligible for ACP. So about half never took advantage of the Affordable Connectivity Program. And just to give you guys some scope of reference, right? If Philadelphia was to say, pick up the cost of the federal benefit, it would cost the city about $65 million a year to keep the current ACP enrollees receiving the maximum benefit that they are, if that's what they're receiving. So that's a pretty high number. It's unlikely that the city would ever be able to pick up that amount. And so we are left with some significant challenges in Philadelphia. And then just a little bit of history. So we launched PHL Connected during the pandemic in 2020. And from 2020 to 2022, PHL Connected was able to subsidize 23,100 free internet connections to pre-K through 12 households using Internet Essentials and T-Mobile hotspots. In 2023, PHL Connected created, in 2023, PHL Connected subsumed, we didn't really create, the citywide digital navigator network, kind of linked it to the 211 hotline, and did a major communications campaign to transition households from PHL Connected subsidy to the ACP, so that all of those K-12 pre-K through 12 households were reached, so that we could say, your internet subsidy is ending from PHL Connected, but there's another option, which is ACP. That was just a year ago that we did that transition, a little over a year ago. As of April 2024, PHL Connected continues to support the 211 hotline and the Digital Navigator network, and continues to maintain 4,500 T-Mobile hotspots that can be distributed to pre-K through 12 students who could not sign up for ACP. And those are distributed through the digital navigators in the network and some charter schools who we have MOUs with. So from the city's perspective, these are some of our ideal outcomes for ACP wind down. We really want to make sure that residents are aware that the subsidy is ending. We want to make sure that residents are aware of any resources that might be available to them that could ease the subsidies end. We obviously care that there's trust among the city, its CBO partners and residents, and that stays intact. So we want to be careful about the messaging that we're putting out there, that we don't have to walk messages back, that it's as honest and accurate as we can be. We want to coordinate with our, the internet service providers that we, operate in the city, including the mobile providers, to communicate with residents as transparently as possible. We want to make sure that our response is on par with other peer municipalities and based on any best practices that we can find about subsidy wind down or other things like that. And we want to make sure that we can continue to advocate for state and federal internet subsidies, which we think fundamentally is probably going to be necessary in the long term. A couple things that I like to have everybody think about, some expectations and realities. So we do not anticipate that everyone will lose their internet all at once at the end of May. So we anticipate that folks may be able to pick up their bills, continue to pay for the internet. The experience that we our experience working with providing internet access demonstrates really that there may not be a flood of calls or need, but a slow trickle as folks sort of begin to realize that they no longer can afford their internet, that they're struggling to afford it, that they are aware of the resources that might be available to them. We also know that many households that were enrolled in ACP were already paying for internet prior to the ACP, and then they applied that subsidy. So some amount of those folks may be able to continue to afford it, at least for some time, once the subsidy ends. And I think more sort of concerning almost is that about half of those who are using ACP are using it combined with Lifeline to get unlimited data for their phones. And this may be an even bigger and unexpected cliff that folks are really relying on ACP to support their phone bills rather than their home internet. So what are we planning to do as the city? So there's two major things that we are working on right now. So we're gonna expand some of the eligibility criteria for the current 4,500 PHL connected T-Mobile hotspots to pre-K through 12 students who need it. And I'll talk about some of that shifting eligibility in a minute. We already will maintain these hotspots. The hotspot distribution is already in progress through some local education agencies and then through 211 and digital navigators. So we are fully aware we can continue this process. We have a method to how things are distributed. It moves pretty seamlessly. They're ready to be provided as of right now. We also anticipate having enough hotspots for now to fill the immediate pre-K through 12 need based on previous PHL connected numbers. So at its height, PHL connected was supporting just under 10,000 internet connections, of which 4,500 were hotspots. And again, many of those supporting were paying for their internet, and then we rolled them over and covered their costs for internet essentials in particular. And so we think that for the moment, we anticipate having enough hotspots to cover the immediate need at this moment. The other thing that we're doing is we are and are in the middle actually of a large outreach campaign to residents that may be using ACP to let them know that ACP is ending and promoting 211 and digital navigator support. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but largely we're updating a lot of our materials and messages. And then we have a paid media campaign with iHeartMedia that is active right now. So shifting some of the eligibility for PHL Connected. So prior to this month, really, the hotspot eligibility was really tied to ACP. So if you were eligible for a hotspot, you had to be a Philadelphia pre-K student, you had to live in Philadelphia, and then you either had to belong to a household that does not meet the ACP eligibility criteria, or you applied for ACP and was denied, or you belong to a household that cannot apply for ACP. So the first, our solution of choice prior to this month was really to enroll folks in ACP, and anybody who had challenges, who was a pre-K through 12 student in Philadelphia, could get a free hotspot to be distributed to them. And we found through that the vast majority of students that we worked with, we could sign up for ACP and get them enrolled in that process. Obviously, with ACP going away, we can no longer sign folks up for ACP. So our new eligibility goes back to our old eligibility for PHL Connected, which is very similar to where we started. So eligible students, again, must live in Philadelphia and be an enrolled pre-K through 12 student. And either they are students designated as English learners or who receive special education services. So this serves as some barometer of need for folks, particularly to identify folks who may be undocumented and may not be able to get or may be afraid of getting services through other methods. Although we certainly know that not all English learners are undocumented. It's just a way for us to kind of designate a high need population without asking that specific question, which would put folks in jeopardy. And then the second criteria is income-based. So really, if they've participated in any of the following benefit programs in the past 6 months, these benefit programs align very closely to ACP, with the one exception that not in ACP, everybody, all schools who participated in the school lunch provision from a community-wide perspective, all of those students were eligible. So every single student in Philadelphia was eligible for every single school district student was eligible for ACP. In this instance, it's really, we're looking for folks who are eligible, who have the benefits that would designate them as low income specifically. And then either they cannot have a wired home internet solution installed in their home, or for some reason they're not eligible for a low-cost ISP solution. They're experiencing homelessness in between housing secure, do not have home internet or only use their mobile phone for internet, or they currently have internet but have indicated that they can no longer afford to keep it and plan to disconnect. So any of those things would enable one of our digital navigators who would screen folks to be able to distribute a free hotspot. In terms of our city communication phases and our plans, so right now we are in the middle of phase 1. We just started phase 2. So we've launched our communications campaign as of April 29th through June. This will run for 5 weeks until June 2nd. And there are radio and social media ads running right now, as well as some place-based advertisements as well. The primary message that we are communicating right now is ACP is ending soon. Your phone or internet bill may increase beginning this month. You can get help by dialing 211 to schedule an appointment with a digital navigator. That's really where we want to send folks. We want them to know that 211 is this option for them, and through that they can get help. This week, our digital navigators began texting and phone banking almost 3,000 households that they've previously engaged with signing up for ACP. So these are households that they sent to USAC to sign up or communicated about ACP in some way, or they themselves signed up for ACP. So we're reaching back out to all of those households, many of which are school district, Philadelphia or charter school families. And we plan to do this text and phone banking starting this week and all the way through the summer to continue to reach folks. And then starting in another week or so, the city's Community Resource Corps will be texting and phone banking up to about 120,000 households who were reached last year about ACP during a campaign that we did with them. And again, to alert them about the end of ACP, to pay attention to their bill, and to dial 211 to schedule an appointment with a digital navigator. Some additional efforts that are happening. So the school district will be sending out end of school year messages, texts, and information to school leaders to communicate out to their families. And then in September, in the end of August, we'll do a 3-week back to school communications campaign with iHeart again, as folks prepare for the coming school year. And then I just wanted to remind everybody that sort of these are some of the programs that our office really supports and manages. So obviously we talked a little bit about PHL Connected. The Digital Literacy Alliance is our cross-institutional grant-making group. We provide small grants for innovative digital inclusion programs. Those grants helped, for example, seed funding for the Digital Navigator Network, and help seed funding for our scaling of device refurbishing and technical support, which we partnered with PCs for People to refurbish and redistribute computers for 2 years. So that is a current, their current grantees, and we have a program to help folks get access to low-cost computers with PCs for People. And then obviously the digital navigation component too, where folks can get one-on-one remote or in-person support to households for access and use of technology. That hotline is a partnership with United Way and 211, and it operates 24/7 and is available in 150 languages. All of this information can easily be found on the city's Digital Equity PHL webpage, which is here on the screen. I don't know why that's there. And I also have a handful of links for you in this deck, which we'll share afterwards. But we put out a blog post about the ACP winding down and what you need to know. All of our website materials have been updated, including the PHL Connected website. And then under resources in the PHL Connected website, you'll find updated PHL Connected flyers in about 16 or 17 different translations, and media toolkits that you can use, both specific ones for pre-K through 12 communities, as well as more general messaging that you can use for everybody. And I think that's all I've got, if folks have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Juliet. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat if you didn't get a chance to ask them now, and we'll address those at the end of the webinar. I'll give a little bit of time for questions at the end as well. Yeah, the city is doing some really great work to try to reach out to folks. I think, Juliet, as you said, it's a delicate matter of how we reach out to folks, especially right now. But it is important to kind of be prepared for everything that happens. One thing that I wanted to review before we get into our low-cost internet plans are some of the things to expect during this immediate sort of ACP transitional period. So I'm going to here. So one thing that is important to remember is that during the ACP wind down, folks that have had pre-existing internet plans will go back to their original costs. And so folks that were used to getting the reduced internet costs or zero costs will essentially revert back to the costs they were paying prior. Folks that are new to the internet may lose coverage. We don't know exactly what that looks like just yet because we're still in this partial month of coverage, but it is something that we'll keep an eye on as we come out of May and we start to see what happens with folks that were new to internet service, did not have pre-existing service, and the ACP expires. But the really important piece I wanted to highlight here, which we'll share in our slide deck after the meeting here, is the consumer protections that remain in place even through the ACP wind down process. One is around terminating service. So anybody that has been providing ACP as an ISP can't terminate ineligible ACP households internet service for failure to pay the service until 90 days has passed since the bill payment due date. That's part of what Juliet's referring to as this sort of weird summer period where we have that 90-day period where there will not necessarily be any termination of services for 90 days. But during this period, ACP companies can switch the household to a lower cost plan with advance notice. And so that's an important piece of what we're going to be talking about in the next section with what those low cost plans are and making sure we're getting the word out to folks about making sure to switch their plan into a low cost plan if necessary. Also, there are consumer protections against early termination fees. So if a household entered into a service plan with a service contract and applied their ACP discount to that service plan, the internet company can't charge the household an early termination fee for terminating that service contract. Even after ACP ends. So if they got the internet plan through ACP and they then want to terminate that, even if ACP is already wound down, there are not supposed to be termination fees. And so if you are working with clients that experience any of these kinds of issues, you can always refer that to the FCC that are still kind of enforcing these consumer protections. And Rich from Drexel adds here some helpful, adds a comment here. There are some households that had internet essentials at $10 a month who upgraded to $30 because of ACP. And we want to remind those households to check which IE plan they are currently on. That's a really great point. And our representative from Comcast will talk a little bit about those two different internet essentials options, the $10 and $30 plan that they have. These are all questions. So for folks that are not in digital navigator organizations or formally doing digital navigation, remember to use that 211 resource if you have any questions about this stuff. So if you are in contact with clients or if you're working with libraries, with patrons who are experiencing some issue around the wind down procedures, make sure to call 211 because that is the kind of first line of defense for figuring out some of these issues as we encounter them. If we come across any new information about this or major things that we want folks to know about, we will get that information out to the network, as quickly as we can. But we're kind of waiting and seeing ourselves what's going to happen over the next 90 days because the wind down process is complicated and everybody has a very different situation in terms of their existing home internet prior to getting ACP. And so there's going to be a lot of different situations depending on whether folks already had internet access and were getting a discount on it, whether they'd never had internet access before, and all kinds of other things. So these are the sorts of things that you can always, contact TLC and the Digital Navigator Network with questions about that stuff. Okay, I think that's all I want to talk about in terms of consumer protections. The other major piece is talking about what those low-cost internet options are, because getting folks to possibly enroll in or transfer to or just kind of know more about some of the low-cost internet options is a really important piece of this process. And so we have 3 different groups that are working on some of this. 2 of them are going to present today, and I'll present some information from Verizon, whose representative couldn't join us today, but has been kind of joining our network and sharing some information about their low-cost plans. I first wanted to introduce Nicole Pender from Comcast to tell us a little bit about some of the low-cost plans that are available from Comcast. You've probably heard a couple of times now Internet Essentials mentioned in our conversations here. That is one of Comcast's flagship low-cost plans. And so, Nicole, I'm happy to pass things over to you to tell us a little bit more about some of Comcast's low-cost options.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a few slides for you all. Okay. Are you all able to see my screen just before I jump in?
Yep, looks good.
Thank you. Awesome. So I'll be focusing on just some of our most recent options. At Comcast, we have been adamant on making sure that our customers are not going to skip a beat due to the fact that ACP will likely be going away. We want to make sure that they continue to have access to fast, affordable, and reliable internet options. And I'll go over quite a few of those once we dive into the presentation. So I'd like to take a glance at some of the things that we rolled out in totality over the last few weeks, just again to make sure that our customers do not go without. So first, I'll touch on the partial ACP credit. So I know I heard someone mention earlier about bills and one of the things that we did at Comcast to help ease the transition of all Xfinity ACP customers who were receiving that federally funded ACP credit is we actually provided our customers with a $14 credit on their bill for the month of May as the government program winds down. In regards to Internet Essentials, I also heard mention of the 2 Internet Essentials packages, the Internet Essentials Standard and the Internet Essentials Plus. So for our Internet Xfinity customers who are enrolled in ACP, they are now automatically eligible to enroll in Internet Essentials for as low as $9.95 a month, or Internet Essentials Plus, which doubles the speed of traditional internet to $29.95 a month. Also want to note that equipment is included. I know in the past there was a 90-day rule. At Comcast, we are waiving that 90-day rule. So in the past, there was an interruption if you were shifting from one plan to another until the end of waiving that 90-day rule in order to allow our consumers to be able to transition into the Internet Essentials program. Another facet that we've just rolled out is Internet Essentials, that's tagged to Internet Essentials, is Xfinity Mobile Savings. So our Internet Essentials customers, our new customers, are able to take advantage of a free line of Xfinity Mobile for 1 year. Additionally, current Xfinity customers enrolled in ACP who add Xfinity Mobile can get an additional free line unlimited for up to 1 year. And that'll save them, of course, hundreds of dollars. After that year, costs will then fluctuate based on the market value, and that'll be reviewed after the 1 year is up. Now jumping to Internet Essentials, now jumping to Now Internet and Mobile. So Now is our newest product that we've rolled out. Essentially with Now, consumers are able to apply for internet and mobile. It's almost like a prepay service. And some of the ways we've been describing it internally, you can compare it to something like a Netflix account. So if you pay for this service, you then have access to the service. Very similar to if you pay for your Netflix account, you then have access to your Netflix account. The really cool thing about this program is that there are no credit checks required. It does not, or your financial history will not be taken into account. It really is kind of just a pay-as-you-go service, which is different from Internet Essentials. That's the biggest difference between the two. And then once I provide you all with this deck, I did include quite a few embedded hyperlinks where you can directly go to the site and dive a little deeper in it. And I'm happy to stay on the call and answer any additional questions that you may have once the presentation concludes. Now Wi-Fi Pass. So now through June 30th, customers can connect to 23 million Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspots across the city for $10 a month. No additional equipment will be required, no long-term commitments, and there are no cancellation fees. So for the first month of this program, it is $10. After the first month, it actually goes to $20. We're doing our best to make sure we're spreading the word about this to all of our consumers through our community partners. And then lastly, we are still heavily involved in lift zones across the city of Philadelphia. We currently have 77 lift zones. Essentially, lift zones are routers that were placed in different community centers and different community organizations where the community could essentially go and have access to Wi-Fi. So individuals, whether they were our customers or not, we are still going to allow them to have access to one or more of our 1,250 Wi-Fi connected lift zones across the country. And then once again, we have 77 of those lift zones right in the city of Philadelphia. So I also wanted to include a screenshot of what consumers will see or potential consumers will see when they're headed over to our website. I will also include a link to this very page after I'm finished with the presentation. But we are really looking to not only help to usher those in to Internet Essentials who have already enrolled in ACP, but those who have never enrolled in ACP, but still would like to explore Internet Essentials. So once again, I will include this for you all in the chat before this call concludes, the link to this page. Some of the advertisement that we have been promoting through what I'm referring to as a two-pronged collateral refresh with our community partners. This is one of them. So what I'm doing is I've reached out to community partners in our portfolio. I am physically dropping off flyers to them. So knowing that school was about to let out, you know, realistically, a lot of our community partners are going to see an uptick of community members coming to them for resources, as schools will now be limiting resources because schools are closing for the summer. We know that they're going to see the same population who could benefit from this program. So making sure that they have the collateral to distribute is our top priority at the moment. We will have another refresh of collateral once schools are preparing to go back into session, knowing that the likelihood of our community partners putting together things like back to school drives or different types of community service events is extremely high. We want to make sure that as consumers or as customers or community members are coming to our community partners, they're also able to receive this information. We're doing our best to leave no stone unturned. So our region within the Freedom Region will include Philadelphia, Delaware County, Montgomery County, Bucks County, Chester County. We're also stretching out to Delaware, the state of Delaware as well, primarily the Wilmington area. And then of course, we're also making sure to promote in New Jersey. Just to highlight a few things about the Internet Essentials program, we are allowing individuals who are applying throughout the community on the spot, be it through a tabling event or a back to school event, end of year event, to actually receive 2 months of free Internet Essentials. We also want to make it very clear that existing Xfinity customers on ACP are allowed to downgrade, knowing that a lot of our consumers either were blindsided by this now new expense, being as though the federal dollars are dwindling or going away. We want to make sure that there's an option for them. Maybe the $29.95 could be too much for their household. And we want to just, again, want to make sure that possibly the $9.95 could step into play and kind of save the day there. Also, prospects are able to sign up and apply for IE and IE Plus regardless of bad debt age until the end of the year in 2024. What we found is that there were quite a few consumers who possibly had a lingering bill with Comcast. We also want to make sure that they can remain connected or kind of re-engage with the company and return to us should they choose to, should this program be a good fit for them as well. Lastly, on the slide, I also want to highlight that recent disconnected Xfinity customers don't have to wait the 90 days before they apply to IE. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, we found that some of our consumers were blindsided by this cost. And even at $9.95, some could not afford it. So their bills began to remain unpaid. So what we've done is we wanted to make sure that once they reapply, if they were disconnected, they now do not have to wait the 90 days. They can come right in and roll right into receiving our service as soon as possible. So just diving a little deeper into the goal and what we're hoping to accomplish with Internet Essentials. Low cost, high speed internet at home, low cost computers, and truly focusing on digital skills training. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with Internet Essentials, consumers are allowed to purchase high speed internet at a very affordable cost at $9.95 a month. Speeds of up to 100 over 20 megabytes at $29.95 a month. There's no tax, no credit check, no term contract, and no cancellation fees. Equipment is included at no additional cost. In-home Wi-Fi is included. Access to Xfinity hotspots are included. Parental controls through our Xfinity mobile app is complimentary. And then again, I did include the online address, the URL for you all to head over to take a further look at that. Also, low-cost computers. Those who are signing up for Internet Essentials also have an option to purchase a brand new computer at the low cost of $149.99 with a 1-year mail-in warranty. So some of the flyers that, all of the flyers that we're distributing actually have all of this information on it so that our customers in the community or potential customers are well aware of the vast offerings that we're pushing out at this time. Lastly, I wanted to hit on digital skills training. So households may also participate in free digital skills training to better understand the internet. And if we do not have it in-house, we have been connecting our community partners as well as individuals with some of our other community partners, as we are well aware that there are some great resources that exist amongst each of the communities within the city. Once again, we have free training available online and in person and print for all age groups. So it is really upon request, which we receive quite a few. But when we do, we work diligently to just make sure we're presenting that information, and we're really helping to push the needle there with digital skills training. And once again, I did include the URL for you all to take a further look at the link. Internet Essentials eligibility. Excuse me. Individuals may qualify for Internet Essentials or for the Internet Essentials program if they live in an area where Xfinity service is available. If they qualify for programs like National School Lunch Programs, Housing Assistance, Medicaid, SNAP, and other similar programs. And upon review, we're more than happy to help individuals identify if they're a great fit. Also, if they have not had Xfinity Internet within the last 90 days, and once again, we've waived this for the duration of ACP. And now that we have put other provisions in place for those who are returning to our services, there is flexibility with that rule. And then also, in the past, we did say that you had to have no outstanding debt to Xfinity, but once again, we are waiving that for the rest of 2024. So until the end of the year, if you have outstanding debt and you are not currently in good standing with the company in terms of transitioning to an IE plan, we will make an exception. I also wanted to make sure you all had eyes on some of our newest collateral for our Now product. So once again, this product is actually really cool because there's no fees, no contracts, no background checks. We do not take into consideration any bad debt, but you are able to secure a great plan for $20 a month. Choose from over 40 live channels and watch whenever you want. 20 streaming channels, all easily accessible through the Xfinity streaming app as well. I believe that is my last slide. I'll pause here. Yes.
Yeah, we had a few questions. I want to make sure, since we're getting tight on time, I wanted to make sure to give Andrea a chance to talk a little about PCs for People. So we're going to go to that, and I'll hang out for a few minutes after the end of the meeting for anybody that has any questions that I can possibly help with. So I wanted to turn things over to Andrea Lindsay from PCs for People.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. I am also going to see if I can just share one super quick little overview slide. Y'all good? Seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
Perfect. Just gonna make it big, and I think we are good to go. So yeah, PCs for People is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We operate nationwide, and we're really excited to have launched our most recent location in Philly. So we started obviously getting computers out to people. That's been the core of our mission for the last 25 years, and that's something we're really excited to be working with Juliet and many of you on. So I'm not going to talk too much about that right now, but always happy to provide more information. You can go to pcsforpeople.org, and we have pages by location, so you can find the address for our Philly retail space, anything else you need there. However, we have always also wanted to make sure that folks have a way to find affordable internet service. And so we love to do that in partnership with ISPs in different areas. We're always happy to refer folks to low-cost plans, but we have started offering our own service as well, just to kind of have an additional option for folks. And so that can look like different things in different places, but what we have right now available for Philly residents is a mobile hotspot service. So that starts with a one-time initial purchase of the hotspot for $60, and that's with a minimum of 1 month of service on top of that. So it's a prepaid, either monthly or up to a year plan. So again, that minimum, if someone wanted to start with just 1 month of service, would be $15 or $16 on top of the $60 for the hotspot. Then the hotspot is theirs, and we usually explain it's just like a prepaid cell phone if folks are familiar with that. They can add time to it as they like. So they could add just a month each month. They could add 3 months, and then they could take 6 months off, and then they could add 12 months. There's a lot of flexibility there. And the price variation is just based on how many months they prepay. So I believe for a single month, it's $16, but it goes down to 15 or perhaps even lower with multiple months. And so for someone who's just kind of signing up with us for the first time, we request income eligibility documentation, which would basically be anything that they use to qualify for ACP. We do have a pretty long list of the types of documentation that we can submit. That's on our website, pcsforpeople.org/eligibility. And I can pop that in the chat in a minute. The kind of most basic thing is folks who are within 200% of the federal poverty level, or we just added a area median income qualification as well, which gives some great flexibility. So if they want to just qualify based on income, then they can submit typically a tax return would be the proof of income. However, if they qualify for some type of income-based assistance program like EBT, Medicaid, federal housing assistance, then documentation that they're currently receiving that benefit will qualify as well. And so folks can come into our retail space in Philly and get one of those hotspots. They can also order them online and have that shipped to their home. If they come in person, just bring paperwork, or we can help them often access documentation through various types of benefit websites. If they're ordering online, they're just going to upload like a PDF or a JPEG of the document, as well as a photo ID. And then we review and approve those orders and ship them out, within a couple of days. For folks who have been using the ACP benefit with PCs for People, unfortunately, we aren't able to participate in kind of the transition month right now. So we've already communicated with all of our subscribers that starting in May, they have the option to either, we haven't, no one has been like stuck in a plan that they now owe us a bill that they weren't expecting. We were doing kind of monthly renewals for ACP anyway. So for May, they could choose if they wanted to just, let their subscription lapse, or if they wanted to go ahead and start the $15 or $16 a month plan. They did not have to resubmit their eligibility documentation. We have, similar to ACP, an annual renewal process. So just, 12 months from when someone last submitted an eligibility document to us, that's when they'll be prompted to submit another one. And yeah, just being mindful of time, I think I'll leave it there for now, but of course, happy to answer questions, and I'll pop a couple more links in the chat in just a minute here. Thank you for the time.
Thanks so much, Angela. That's great. I wanted to share a little bit of information about Verizon's program, which I will email out to everybody afterwards. But Verizon has introduced a new program called Verizon Forward, which works as a subsidized plan where you show documentation for the subsidy. So that would include previously some of the things that would make you previously eligible for ACP. It includes Lifeline, right? So if you are currently on the Lifeline program, that is an eligibility possibility, and also the Special Supplemental Nutritional Program, or WIC. And the Verizon Forward discount is a discount of up to $20 off of a Verizon plan, which can get it down to as low as $20 a month, with a few other discounts like autopay and a few other things. So I'll send out a little bit of information about that specific low-cost plan from Verizon, which is a subsidized plan from Verizon afterwards. I wanted to quickly address anybody's questions. I know we had a few folks in the chat, two for Comcast. One was whether Comcast refusing internet essentials for non-payment by another apartment in the same building. Basically, are there broad considerations for the debt forgiveness component of the post-ACP protections that Comcast is offering?
I do not have that answer on hand. That's the first time I'm hearing of that, honestly. That's a unique one. What I can do is I can look for that answer today and get back to you within the next few hours. We have a team of people working on that, working on Internet Essentials and reactivating devices. So I can absolutely follow back up on that.
Cool. And then the second one was whether Comcast will be open to referring customers looking for a device that can't afford the $150 cost of the low cost device to a local digital navigator program that offers free laptops and digital skills courses with a mild with a subtle plug for Drexel over there, I think, from Rich. It has just such a program.
Absolutely. And I actually would love to meet with that program as we fund those types of programs and try to partner with those types of programs. So I would absolutely love to connect.
Awesome. I'll connect you, Rich, with Nicole. That's awesome. Any other questions that folks have? I know we're a little over time, but appreciate you hanging on with us for the last couple of minutes.
There was also one other question in the chat for Comcast, if there are any eligibility requirements for the NOW programs.
Oh, right.
No. So no background checks, no credit checks. Truly a come as you are program. I think it's like it's really cool. So I think a lot of times that is a barrier for people because of, especially with the pandemic and how your finances have changed likely or sometimes. So what happens is they come to us, and I think sometimes you get denied for service because of your financial standing. But no, we're not checking any of those things. If you are able to afford that initial payment to activate service, you then have access to service, no questions asked.
Yeah, we helped create a document with the Digital Navigator Network for kind of just a like a one-page list of all of these kinds of plans. And so we do have now on the unsubsidized plans because it's important to keep track of both for folks that don't qualify for subsidies. So I'm really glad you asked that question. If you're interested in that document, just shoot us an email and I can possibly connect you with it. I need to check with the folks I work with. I think that is it. Do we have any other questions before we let folks go for the afternoon?
I have a question for Nicole about that NOW program, which I think is awesome. Is there similar, if somebody was on like IE Plus, for example, or Xfinity and wanted to switch to the NOW program, do you anticipate there being a 90-day wait? Is there like any restrictions from switching from a current Comcast service to that program?
That 90-day wait is waived until the end of 2024. We are actively fighting for that to be waived. That is outside of our control, in the hands of legal. However, we have had provisions there where that wait is now being waived until the end of 2024.
Awesome. Thank you.
No worries.
A lot of this is getting the word out to folks and getting them the plan that they need and the changes they need made as soon as we can.
And just again, I'm more than happy to drop off flyers anywhere in the city. I live in the city, but work in the Trevose office. So if anyone has questions about any of these documents, I'm a crusader. So I will backpack and get them to you. Just let me know.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us. If you have any other questions, go ahead and be in touch. We'll have a recording of this webinar that we will share with folks if you came in late or want to share with anybody with all that information. And we'll send out an email with all of the links and slides and everything, all the information that we had in this webinar to you soon afterward. And with that, I think we can wish everybody a good afternoon, and we hope we'll see you again soon.